Well, welcome everybody. I think I'll begin the recording and get us underway. If more people arrive, we'll hopefully I'll see them there and let them in. Yeah, welcome to this webinar. I think Chrissy, you wanted to have a quick word before we get underway, then we'll launch in.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you very much, Leigh, for doing this for us today. He did this one out of the goodness of his heart, which was very lovely. And also just a reminder of our series that's coming up. So the next webinar will be it'll be a business recovery webinar on Thursday at 2 p.m. till 3 p.m. Again, if you can't make it, then you'll be able to watch it after. But it's always good to be able to try and jump on these live because, you know, you can be asking questions, interacting at the end, that sort of thing. So thank you everybody for coming along, and tell all your friends about them.
Thanks, Chrissy. Well, welcome everybody. Look, I know time is precious, so we'll make the most of it. Welcome to this. So today we'll very quickly go through a model for personal resilience, and it's a very well-known model, but it's a very good one. And we'll look at the 6 elements or 6 domains of personal resilience that are really important. Then we'll stop for a short period and have a quick 5-minute dash where we'll go into breakout rooms. Probably the numbers use about 2 rooms. So I'll give you a chance just to have a look at that, how you relate to this model, because it's a very practical one. Then we'll come back and we'll spend probably 10 minutes, if we can at the end, to look at one element of it that I think is really important about emotional self-regulation. And I guess I want to look at that because it's perhaps the hardest one to get into place for resilience, which is about composure and regulating our emotional responses to things. And at the moment, COVID-19, people have been under serious stress with their businesses and run several businesses. We've had our moments of stress. It's a matter of how quickly you come out of it, not whether you get knocked over, but how quickly you come back as to whether you're going to come through this successfully or otherwise. So we'll learn a lot about ourselves in terms of that, and this model I think will help. After this, I will give a self-assessment that tests and allows you to look at yourself on the 6 domains with 3 questions under each. And I'll pass that through to Chrissy along with the PowerPoint presentation and the recording. So I really encourage you to take that, use it, self-assess yourself, see where your gaps are, see where your good bits are, but also use it with your team, perhaps. Very quickly, yes, look, Institute for Tourism Leadership Australia, we've had the pleasure of doing a lot of work with Mackay, and we're currently running another leadership program with Mackay and with Sundays teamed up, which is fabulous. That's about resilient leadership, and we're also running one with Bundaberg. I just got off this morning on a webinar with Gladstone. We're doing one there, and we're about to kick off a major program with a large group of people down in northern New South Wales. So we work in the space of accredited and non-accredited workshops and so on. And we're doing a bit of research in Japan. A nice photo I took just before Christmas, which I was lucky I got in and out. And we're part of a research project there looking at inclusive leadership. Excuse me while I just let some people in who need to be admitted. So out of that, we've developed a really good look at what resilience is about on a regional level to personal level. So what I'll do is walk through each of these 6 domains and let you get your head around them. And as I go through, I really encourage you to look deeply. Am I good at this? Or am I not so good? And which of these has carried me through so far, and normally does in tough times, and which of these probably perpetually lets me down, or several. So I reiterate that bit around resilience being the ability to bounce back and recover, and how committed and optimistic you can actually be. This is a great model from Jury Russo. So we'll walk through it. Not too much detail, but enough to give you an understanding of how it works. So the model argues that the most important bit is to have some vision. And I've probably run through this for about 100 people recently in the last even 5 or 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. And any number of people will say, look, I'm not good on the vision thing and setting goals. It's partly about that. But the fact that if you're not so good at setting some goals or having a vision for yourself might also be a major underpinner for why sometimes you're not so resilient, because you can't get back up and get back on the path if you didn't actually have a path. So for some of us, it's not about 3-year goals or 5-year goals, but it's about that sense of purpose and strong values. So often when I talk to people one-on-one, you can quickly work out their vision. It's who they want to work with. They want to be, say, in the tourism industry, want to be in hospitality, I want to work with this, I want to work with that. It becomes much clearer. For a lot of people, though, lacking that purpose allows one thing to be missing. When you're really under pressure and you've had a massive emotional hijack, either gotten very angry or very anxious and wanted to bury yourself under the pillows in the morning, if you don't have a sense of vision, what's going to get you out of bed? So some of us are really high. I know I've got a really strong sense of purpose. I can't get enough done in the day. So the sooner I get up, the more I can get in to small things and big things. But that's not everybody. So have a think about that. And the moment what you're doing is out of congruence, out of alignment with your goals and vision, you'll find you're working in or working on a business that's something you're no longer enjoying. So at the moment, I'm sure that's being seriously tested by people. The second one is composure, and composure is about the fight-flight response, which is a natural reaction the brain has. I'll elaborate more when we have that little session after this. And it's just a normal part of our makeup. However, if you lack the capacity to regulate how your brain reacts to every challenge, every threat, and you get very defensive or you fall apart, you can have what we call an emotional hijack. And the brain is at its essence is about electricity and blood, neurotransmitters and hormones that will set you off the rails for an hour, a day, or a couple of months. And right now is not the time to lose composure. Excuse me while I admit somebody else who wants to come in. Okay, I'll go back. So composure is the most important to me at the moment. Those people who stay most controlled, most composed will come through this the better and win. If you are static, if you are frozen and can't move, I think you're in a lot of trouble. So I would see that being static is an enemy and composure is without a doubt the ally we have. Some people are naturally calm and in control, or they at least are when they're in a situation around other people. Some of us are good at putting on that facade, but behind the scenes we might be a duck with its legs paddling underwater and a bit stressed. However, if you're stressed in front of your teammates, in front of your employees, and you're showing that lack of composure, it'll spread like an infection, no pun intended. So it's a really important one. We'll come back to it. Reasoning. I would argue that if you can't stay controlled and stay composed, how the heck are you going to come up with ideas and solve problems and deal with the changes and opportunities that are there? We're about to work with a few people around the countryside on who want some one-on-one help, and hopefully those people are at a point by now where they are open to shifting their business or changing how they do it, or at least positioning themselves for a few months' time when we can all get back to some sense of starting normality again. Even though that might be a long haul for some businesses and particularly, obviously, the tourism markets. However, if you aren't able to anticipate and plan and work through that, then really, what plan have you got? And that's the bit that we really need to think through. How challenged am I on this? The other three are all just as important. So see all 6 of these as odd-shaped jigsaw pieces. Vision being kind of a key central piece. Composure, I think if it's missing, how am I going to have reasoning? Probably won't look after my health. I certainly won't have much tenacity. So health is one where maybe, not surprisingly, many people will score themselves in our little survey of self-assessment much lower. Well, not in all cases. I've found that those that score themselves high in this also score themselves high in purpose and goals and vision. They know why they're here. My own pathetic little mantra is, well, you're at an age where you better squeeze another 10 or 15 years out of this body and mind. If you want to do that, you better do something about making sure you get some exercise and walk and eat some decent food and not drink too much Shiraz of the night. So it also, that means about wellness. At the moment, that's being seriously tested because many of us are concerned for other people that really will let the flood of the wrong hormones in their brain cause a lot of problems. So for a good, healthy body, you need the neurotransmitters and hormones of serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins all running. They'll make you feel calm, they'll make you feel happy, they'll make you feel huggy, kissy. They are the things that make us connect with other people. And you really want to avoid cortisol and adrenaline. Adrenaline's fine if you're jumping off a cliff with a rubber band tied to your ankle and you're paying someone to do that. No, I don't know why you do that. But it's not a good thing to have in a workplace or a family situation when there are some severe stresses on the business or the people involved. So how am I going in that respect? Is my mental health okay? Can I pull myself together? And all of us have had our moments during this current crisis, and it has been. It's a good time to reflect back and say, well, what was the trigger? What was the domino that fell and knocked something else over inside my head that then got me to spin out of control for a period of time? For some of us, it's trying to take on the woes and the troubles and to care too much in one sense about other people. And for some of us, it's purely, I've got that big bank loan and this business is just on its knees right now. So there are good reasons why that's going to test us. The fifth one then is tenacity, which, obviously it's a critical element, and that's this ability to get back up. I think it's the one you can pick in people in a 5-minute conversation. You don't have to ask them if they're tenacious, you can. You'll see it and hear it in their voice and how they talk about things. And I think also they'll have a strong vision because, again, tenacity means hanging on and not letting go. And if you don't have a purpose for getting out of bed in the morning, well, what are you hanging on to? What are you, trying to get out of this? So a critical element of this is realistic optimism. So beware the person who right now tells you and pats you on the knee or otherwise, or virtually with an elbow through the screen, and says, it'll all be okay, don't worry. I mean, that would just set me off, I think, because it's not okay, it's difficult. So realistic optimism is important. And the realistic optimism says there's a light at the end of the tunnel, whatever phrase you want to use, we can see it, but getting there is going to be really hard, but we will get there. And I would suggest and congratulate, I think, the federal government and the various health experts and so on have done an amazing job of doing that. They've kept us really honest, but they've kept enough hope to make sure we keep trying. Research was done following any number of wars and conflict, but certainly the Second World War. They looked at people who were incarcerated in prison war camps. Those that were really badly pessimistic generally suffered badly. And those that were overly over the top optimistic didn't cope so well. The ones that remained realistic and knew they had to survive and face a challenge every day were the ones that did better. So it's a really important thing to keep in your head at the moment, to be tenacious and keep that hope alive. And that'll add to a person's resilience without doubt. And the last one's collaboration. It's an interesting one, but we're a social beast. So we have, we've evolved from a species that's lived in groups, hunting wild animals and running through forests and tall grass and trying to survive. And even before we were able to have speech, we've fed off the body language, like the ears on deer in a big herd of deer or animals that all flick and twitch and face the same way and then bolt if something comes. So we're geared up to connect with others, to read the signs. So again, if there's a lack of composure around me and lots of emotional hijacks, it's really hard to connect. But more important, as we all know at the moment, trying to connect with people and stay in touch online it's got its own challenges. It's been the saviour for a lot of people. And what we've been detecting, and it's interesting for you to reflect perhaps on yourself here, is that the introverts, me being a deep introvert, I want social isolation to go on for another 10 years. I mean, I wish all the extroverts well, maybe free you into the world and go and socialise. I love I can indulge in the excuse for staying in and indulging in my own thoughts, which is what what we introverts do. That's where we get our energy. So for people who are extroverted, this is a particularly hard time. And a colleague of mine, Robbie Cornelius, was saying that when the government said that they'd be from Friday onwards or Saturday, allowing people to gather in parks and have picnics, he had about 20 texts from people, all of whom were outrageous extroverts, all dying to get out there and connect, and that's a very understandable reaction. But for all of us, we have a need for some social connection. And often the bit that's missing in wellness is of which resilience is an outcome. Resilience and wellness go together in a strange way, but they're really like a hand in glove thing. They do go together really closely. Social connection is really important. You staying in touch with friends, you staying in touch with family, you having some social experience where you can stimulate serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and other endorphins and so on, and feel good about yourself. And when that goes missing, it's why we always look after people who are living on their own or isolated. So at the moment, I think that's perhaps been elevated in the minds of a lot of us as something that is critical. So here's my question. We might have a 5-minute dash. We might even, looking at the time, be able to get in a 10-minute dash here. What I'd like us to do is I'm going to stop sharing the screen in a moment. I'm just going to let you get your head around these questions and just think through the 6 domains of resilience, or write them down. And for you, here's the great time to reflect, because when everything is going well, we often don't reflect very deeply. But right now, I know any number of people have been seriously tested, including myself. So which of the 6 domains am I really good at? And it has undoubtedly brought me through as one of my enduring strengths. And which one of these, or 2 or 3 or even 4, has been really tested during COVID-19? I dare say composure and tenacity and collaboration are all typical of that. And what impact has that had as a result? So what we're going to do now is to, let's go and get someone in who's trying to get in. What we're going to do now is I'm going to stop the sharing the screen and bring you back up. Feel free, please, to unmute yourself and bring your smiling face on if you've got a camera. And we're going to set up, we've got, what, 4, 8, 12, 13 people. We'll set up 3 rooms. And you'll go into a room, I'll come and visit, have a quick duck in and have a listen. When you get into the rooms, make the most of your time. Someone take the lead and start talking. And what we're looking at is what has impacted me the most and what has held me together the best, and how do I get them all working together? Any questions on that? Neither, Sarah. Okay, I'll put you in, talk to you shortly. You'll get a notification to join a breakout room. And I'll start the recording and bring us back to where we were. And welcome back. Dipped into a couple of conversations there. They were going pretty full on, which was fantastic. We could talk about a lot more. So the element I wanted to talk about was composure, and without distracting us now, composure is a really important part in turn to emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is an antecedent or something we need to build our resilience. So there's a lot of research around that. So emotional intelligence is how I control myself outside of my IQ, how I control myself, how aware I am of myself, how I regulate my emotions, and how I am good at establishing relationships and keeping them. And for a lot of us, emotional intelligence is a lifelong challenge. So people who are stuck at a 14 or 15-year-old level of emotional intelligence rarely are successful in life. There's every chance they'll probably be making a lot of bad choices and won't be successful. So most of us we can get better every year with experience of emotional intelligence, where every year we actually drop off our IQ. That's just part of life. So that composure is around self-regulation, and it's really important that you, there are about 1 million bits of information or bytes of information that come in virtually every few seconds into our brain, and it can be overwhelmed, so it tries to simplify things a lot. And one of the ways it does that is to siphon things out to see whether they are threatening to us or not. And if they're threatening, it wants us to usually do two things. It wants us to run away in flight, and or it wants us to get very angry and fire up and go into a fight mode. And sometimes we can get frozen in between. So it sends it's a primitive part of the brain called the amygdala, sends a really strong signal, and in a millisecond or two, that emotional reaction of fear or anger or it's not all big stuff. Sometimes it's a small thing that will set us off. It might be me feeling like someone's not taking me seriously, or who's challenging my business capacity or my ability to work in an organisation, or maybe I sense they don't like me, whatever it might be. It could be small things that set us off, and we get a problematic thought, and then within a couple of seconds, blurt, we start behaving in a way that's not necessarily the best. So you can reflect right now, and you can spend the rest of your life reflecting on it and want to do something about it. Do you indulge quickly in your primary reactions because you get angry a lot and react very quickly a lot, or do you also get very anxious a lot and indulge in both those ends, or can you try and get to the middle of the seesaw and keep yourself a bit flatter? So what we're always trying to do is, there's an old part of the brain called the amygdala that sets that very primitive emotional reaction, and it can get more refined. And it links to the front part of the brain, which is the neocortex. It's like a smart part of the brain. It's the part that's the kind of the executive center. In less than a second or 2 seconds, it will calm us down and we'll make a rational decision about something. 99 times out of 100, and many times a day, dozens of times an hour, that process is going on. We don't even know it's happening sometimes. However, if it doesn't, then we may indulge in one of those fight-flight moments. And that's because the amygdala, near the sort of bottom, the back of the brain, stick to the front of the brain through what they call the prefrontal lobes. And in the old days, sadly, they used to cut the prefrontal lobes and have frontal lobotomy, which was a way of taking someone who exhibited enormous ranges of rage or anxiety and they couldn't control it, and pretty much making them an emotional vegetable. Nowadays we do all that somewhat differently, thankfully, but it's still an important thing. So for us that I'm suffering clinically from that, can I just create enough space to start thinking rationally? And I know when on March the 22nd, when I knew that the next day that it was the end of tourism, the final straw, and they basically shut cafes and restaurants, I had about 24 hours, I know, where my self-composure was absolutely tested. And luckily, it lasted 24 hours because by the end of that week, I'd already been rescuing a very large amount of income that was totally at risk of disappearing. I quickly got out of that, but had I stayed and indulged in that and got very sad about it, I think it would have been a tough period of time. So you've got to think of the Darth Vader. When you encounter something that's unexpected, particularly the limbic system, which is the bottom of the brain, gets overly aroused. And when we feel the threat from something, we do go into a very defensive mode, and we can react as if something is really physical danger or threat. And that's called an amygdala hijack or an emotional hijack. So at the moment, we've got an entire industry that has probably gone through one of the greatest, with operators, gone through some of the biggest emotional hijacks they're ever going to have. Hence, imagine that spills over, because it's not just my emotional hijack. If I'm at home with a partner and we're running the business together, they're also going to have an emotional hijack. Those two things are just sparks which make for the yelling and the screaming, or the arguments and all the stuff that can typically happen in those circumstances. So in terms of composure, it is convoluted. We spend a lifetime practicing bad habits, and we have to spend the rest of our lives to try and overcome some of the things we do. Because there's nothing worse than being overwhelmed. We all know that. I know right now there are people online here that would have been feeling very overwhelmed, very stressed, and very exposed to particularly put yourself in the shoes of people in the Mackay tourism as an example. Yes, they're getting paid every fortnight, so we're not going to compare themselves to people in business who just lost 95% of their income. However, they feel the pain of everybody, and you have to be very careful you don't take all that pain on your shoulders and try and rescue everybody from that as much as we're all doing as much as we can to help. So if you're stuck in the red zone, I call it the left-hand column, you're going to feel the threat, you're going to feel the fight, flight. You're going to have a lot of anger, a lot of fear and anxiety. It's going to be unpleasant, and it can't go on too long. You know, in typical circumstances, we argue about the washing up, or who left the tea towel out, or who left the towel on the floor in the bathroom, but get over it pretty quickly. But those are small examples. For some people, there might have been a flood of that sort of toxic feeling, and that cortisol and adrenaline are the things that will come flying out, as opposed to the serotonin and the dopamine and the oxytocin and so on, which make us feel good. So we're trying to get all of us and all of you into that blue zone, and having a look at yourself and doing this self-assessment, I think will help you do that. So you start to see that I can indulge in this, because ultimately it is an indulgence, I made up a word there, to feel that, I call it the marshmallow. It actually feels good to be miserable for a period of time. If I stay there, I just can eat that marshmallow. It won't do me any harm, but it's light and fluffy, there's no sugar in it, of course. But it is, and we keep taking it, and by default, our pattern in life is to always run away and get anxious about that threat. And whilst that's very easy to say stop doing it, of course it's hard to stop doing it, but we have to do our best to stop doing it, or taking the marshmallow at the angry end. So a little bit of anger is fine in terms of the tenacity, like get serious, you're going to beat this thing. That's the self-talk I put in my head. You will not be beaten by it, work your way through it. And I heard someone in the short period of breakouts say that about, we'll get through this, we'll set a goal, we'll spend another 12 months doing this, we'll change our plans a bit, but there's a light, and that's realistic optimism. I think that was a wonderful comment that was made. It was Melissa, actually. It was really great mindset to have. So this is all about your mindset and how you maintain that balance, or have you got the imbalance. So it's a great time to look at yourself, and if you can get yourself composed, you might have some chance of dealing with your business, or in turn, helping other people, which is what some of us do. There's a great way you want to check your battery. I know some people will be participating in a program that we're involved in that will help people check this, but this is a free app that's Green X7. That's a business that I collaborate with, and we're currently holding hands to do some work on a large wellness and resilient program. But they have an app which will tell you whether you're thriving or surviving. And the thriving is the blue zone. You might see all very similar things there: connected teams, better resilience, productivity there typically. And the surviving is all the opposite, really, being overwhelmed and being exhausted. And it's a great way to check yourself on a number of things, such as purpose. Am I connected? Have I put my feet in the sand lately? Have I done something for me? Have I had any fun? So there's about 7 elements they look at. And it's about the space between your ears. It's not necessarily about you doing physical exercise, but of course it also says get out and do something. The reason that people exercise, and people who madly exercise, I know it probably still is, but certainly has always been something placed a great emphasis on exercise, and it's been in that field in his earlier life. It does something in your brain that's actually a natural drug, and that's why people get hooked on it. So for a lot of us, the wellness space is the one that we let drop off the most. So check that out, because it's a great reminder I get reminded every other day to check my battery, and I know I'm always going to be 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 on purpose and vision, because that's just how I live my life. But some of the other ones are really crappy, and it's a reminder for me to do something about them. And that's all I wanted to say. I'll bring us back online, but I'll put a plug in here, and I will pass on this PowerPoint, and we'll pass on that personal resilience assessment. When you get the PowerPoint, I'd love you to go to this link. It'll take you 3 minutes, and it's a little survey where you give your answers about how you perceive the Mackay region and its level of community resilience, which is something which is part of the study we're doing. So I'd love you to be able to do that. It'd be something that we would most definitely appreciate. And I might just bring up the resilience tool just before we finish, just to make sure that you can know what I'm talking about, what to expect, and see that this is going to be a really useful tool. So you'll have 6 questions under each of the traits of vision. So, for instance, this one will test a lot of people. And the composure one, well, it's a hard one to put 5, 5 and 5. Never criticise myself, doubt my abilities or expect failure. Ouch. Always challenge my doubts and fears and use positive thinking to counter them, and identify and deal with self-sabotaging personality traits. Now, if I'm a 1 on those because I never do that, then there's my space. If I'm a 5, that's unbelievable, because it's a difficult thing to do, and every year, every new situation will test us again. So I'd steer you to that. It will only take you 5 minutes, but it's something that you can use, you can share with a with a friend or a colleague, and I'm sure it would be beneficial. And if you've got a team of staff, do it online, send it out, and just spend 15 minutes in one of your team sessions to go through that, and be able to have some evidence about being resilient, because resilience and wellness are extremely closely linked. And that is the end of the webinar. Happy to take any comments. Thank you for taking part.
Thank you, Leigh. That was great. I mean, we've heard a little bit of that before in our course, but I think it's a really good time to remind ourselves of all those, of all those things that, I suppose challenge you and how you react to them. So, yeah, we'll certainly be sending this around and reminding everybody to make sure that they get to watch this and then do that, do the little survey as well.
Fabulous. So, Taz, sorry.
Thanks, Leigh. Again, I think I've been doing a bit of work with you for a number of years in and around this space, and I sort of spoke in my breakout room around composure is probably the one thing that I constantly have to work on. And you mentioned before about the dark side and the hijacks, and you've helped me been able to identify hijacks and not go down the same path over and over and over again. So it's something that I'm always constantly working on and looking at. And I think today's sort of help there is hopefully everyone got something from it. No one is brilliant in this space, and I think that it's a matter of being able to identify it and understand where you're need to work further on. And as I say, composure is the part that I'm constantly fighting with, but it's something that I can deal with, and hopefully I can I'm learning how to get my my side up and going. So yeah, thank you again, Leigh. It's good to spend some time with you.
No worry. Good to see some of you again, and good to see others for the first time.
Thank you, Leigh.
Bye.